You're listening to Across the Pondcast. Cybersecurity rants and war stories from both sides of the Atlantic.
Hello and welcome to Across the Pondcast, a show where we talk and occasionally rant about cybersecurity topics with perspectives from both sides of the Atlantic. I'm Tib3rius. I'm joined, as always, by my lovely kiosk-shaped co-host, Mr. Andy Swift, and today we're joined by Mike Manrod and Ezra Woods to talk about hacking kiosks. Mike, Ezra, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Tib3rius. So glad to be here and super excited to join you both.
Same. Glad to be here.
Andy, how are you doing?
Definitely sound like we've just captured them and forced them to be here. Just I promise we haven't. But yeah, I'm good. I'm also happy to be here. Tibbs forces me to be here.
We rolled up like the kiosk strapped to a refrigerator dolly, I swear. I was just wheeled in here, propped up, and away we go.
Yeah, it's good enough for me. And I love that massive mug. I'm going to make references because we were talking about that before the show. That mug is amazing, and I need one of them.
Do you mean the massive mug?
Or
do you mean
the massive?
This is in case I run out of the other one.
I was going to say, people are going to have to check out the YouTube channel to see just the absolute size of this mug. But yeah.
The amount of coffee you can fit on that. I mean, like, you haven't slept in the last year, I'm assuming.
I mean, has anybody? Well, it's been quite the year.
Yeah, welcome to cybersecurity.
Before we start, this show is made possible thanks to our sponsors. If you want to sponsor an episode, please send an email to sponsors@acrossthepondcast.net for more details. Okay, so I think we have to start off with the basics of what's a kiosk and how do you hack them?
So I love that question because we've sort of stumbled into that definition, right? Like the classical definition of a kiosk is, a computer with one or more, usually one application that is facing lower trust users, like people in a shopping mall looking to find a store, or people at a computer they take money out of or transfer money or Bitcoin with, or people checking in to get their ticket when they catch a flight somewhere. But we've really started to broaden our definition. When I go to Denny's and a robot rolls up with a smiley face with my food on it, is that a kiosk? I mean, it's got a screen, it's got ports, it probably has wireless protocols. We were joking with, I think it was Kazushi on a thread recently about he challenged somebody to build a T800 Terminator. And I'm like, yeah, do it. It's a kiosk. Like we'd love to give it to us for a few days. Right. So, anytime we have something that is processing visual or other stimuli from an environment in close proximity with an untrusted user, granted, that is not the traditional definition of a kiosk, but in my mind, like that could be like anything we can get access to that interacts with us in a low trust environment, I would think of as a kiosk.
I love that you just reduced the Terminator to a kiosk. It's
It's a very special kiosk, but
if Claude Code becomes Skynet, you guys are screwed. Like,
we are. We're totally screwed.
It would have been a very different film.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so it's funny because if Claude Code made the software for the T800s and it was like a whole lot of the vibe coded stuff we're seeing, and don't get me wrong, I'm pro AI development, but like a lot of the slop out there that we're seeing rolled out by Microsoft and other vendors, like if you look at it, the T800, like that would have been really easy. It would have been like some sort of poorly developed remote code execution flaw or a wireless protocol with default creds, and you just shut them all down and hijack them and turn them against each other. And, movie ends 5 minutes in, everybody throws a barbecue, somebody breaks out beer and hot dogs, everybody's happy. So I think we should rewrite the Terminator series with AI slop code.
nice. I mean, they've shut down Sora too, so we can't generate videos of it anymore. That's sad.
It is sad. I enjoyed a few you put out, and I'm bummed that I did not get on the wagon before it went away.
Oh, yeah. It's an end of an era. It's an interesting app. I'll say that.
Yeah. Instead, we could have had films where we have 5 minutes of robot fighting and then an hour of hot dogs. Like, who wouldn't like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting though, right? Because like the nature, like, coming back from all of us hanging out, last week in San Francisco, you look around, the nature of our world is changing. The nature of what we do for meaning, what we contribute, and the roles of humans and machines working together. Like it's different than it used to be. And I don't know that any of us know what it's going to look like in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. I certainly don't.
I'm just along for the ride and enjoying the roller coaster along the way. I have no idea what's coming. I got a 5-year-old son. I have no idea what he's going to experience in the world of computing when he gets to like his teenage years. Fuck knows what it's going to look like then, in all honesty. A very different world, I suspect, to the one we all grew up in. So it can be very strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things will change, but I think a lot of things will stay the same, especially regarding security. Like, what it looks like is going to be different, but there's still going to be a lot of vulnerabilities and a lot of poorly made things. Whether it's made by people or AI, it's still going to be poorly implemented.
Yeah. It's still going to be bugs out there. There's that interesting conversation about will pen testing still exist, and it's when you see the amount of like slop and poorly made things that are getting churned out, it's sort of go, I think there's stuff space for it. There's definitely at some level. Anyway, that is a very different conversation to kiosks.
Yes, we have invited you guys on to talk about
and then
kiosks.
inevitably we end up talking about freaking AI.
AI, of course we do.
The first 5 minutes of every conversation. It's I'm gonna get sick of it one day. I think I'm already sick of it now.
It's like the bingo card that we put out a few days ago with agentic in the center. Like we did a bingo card for RSA like 3 years ago, and it had all the buzzwords, making fun of the buzzwords. Well, we remade it for this year's RSA, and it has agentic as the free score and just AI on every square, because that was pretty much RSA 2026.
Yeah.
I think it's every conference in 2025, 2026 has been that same theme, really, hasn't it? Of just everything AI.
It has, and that's one of the things I love about kiosks, is it's something that you actually have to get your hands on. Like you can't even record it until you've escaped to host and the fun stuff's already done. So like half the stuff we put out on GitHub and Medium is like terrible camera phone photos, because at the point you've escaped to host, there's no point in taking a picture of much. You've already done the thing. So it's funny, in an AI-centric world, maybe that's what attracts us to kiosks, is it's something where you have to be there with it, roll up your sleeves, and a human has to touch a machine.
Yeah, and then I'd say too, like it is very human testing. Like most of the stuff that we've discovered, I mean, there's been like AI assistants for, researching things, but it really is just like manually going through everything, testing different menus, trying every single keyboard shortcut that you've ever heard of, and then all the ones that don't exist. And sometimes they work. Like there's been situations where, just because we have hands-on keyboard, like there's never another way stuff we found would have been found out.
Yeah, I love that.
So how did you guys get started in kiosk hacking, and where have you sort of taken it?
So there's a funny Genesis story that goes back almost half a decade of our buddies Cameron and Jim and I playing with Citrix till like 3 o'clock in the morning, escaping Citrix. And we managed to go from, these are issues we've fixed in our environment, but innately we figured out that pretty much anywhere you have like Citrix ADC, Citrix storefront, if it's not manually locked down by GPO, as simple as like a file open menu and navigating to Windows System 32 cmd.exe works by default in Citrix, and you can move from like a low trust user to taking over an environment from there. So we started playing with that, and I think a bunch of us had tinkered with kiosks sooner, but eventually we put 2 and 2 together, banging coconuts together of like, hey, wait a minute, the things you use to escape to host on a kiosk are the same things as you use to escape to host on Citrix or similar presented app environments. And then it just became an obsession for Ezra and I and a few of our other friends of like, all right, we got to chronicle all the kiosks and test them all out and see which ones are good and which ones are bad and what you can do with them.
A Pokedex. The kiosk Pokedex.
Yeah, exactly.
Essentially, yeah.
If it didn't have a name, now you have a name. Excellent. I like Citrix breakout testing. It's like one of the only things that's actually gotten its own name in pen testing as a service. Like most pen testing companies offer like Citrix breakout testing on its own, which is just ridiculous when you think about it as a situation. It's that bad that people like actually have services specifically for breakout testing on Citrix, which is great. So is there anything that is similar in like the kiosk world where you are just doing like kiosk testing, or does it come under hardware testing, or do you have like a specific brand of this is a kiosk testing service that you've come across?
So I think the way we approach it a lot, like there is some service and there's some paid stuff we've done, but a whole lot of it is just getting permission or getting a hold of the device. I mean, I'm not going to flash the camera around my loft, but there's like kiosks everywhere. Like either getting permission or getting a hold of a device and just trying things. And we've assembled that into, if you go on GitHub, the Control Escape Post project under our Crude Solutions repo, we have a walkthrough of Win11 attended access escapes that all work. We have some Chrome scenarios. We have some Mac OS scenarios. And then we have a pretty robust assembly of just all the things to try on a Windows kiosk. And it really, I think the importance of this dawned on us July 19th, 2024, walking around the world, looking at airports and seeing that the whole world turned blue on that day. So you see a sign in an airport, it's a kiosk. You check in, it's a kiosk. Is it joined to a domain? Does that domain trust another domain? Is network segmentation of all these kiosks absolutely flawless? So far, we've found the answer is not always, but often no.
And I think a lot of it too was accelerated by, like, as we started learning a little bit more, we have our own kiosks deployed in our environment for like our library and things like that. And once we started testing with those, with the stuff we learned from other things, it was really like like it's not, by default, or even like with a little bit of work, most of it's just not, especially for Windows, not what you would expect. And like Mike mentioned, for us too, like most of us on our team, I mean, if we just got access to a bunch of different kiosks, we'd do it for free. Like being able to do it as part of any sort of assessment is a bonus. But if we're able to just find things that other people might not know, impacts them yet, I mean, sign me up, I'll be there.
Yeah. I mean, we'd even go across the pond if you've got a cool kiosk out there, Andy. I'll fly out and see you as long as there's chips in a kiosk. We're on our way.
I was going to say roll credits.
yeah.
Podcast mention.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, of course we have them over here, but it seems like one of those things whenever we're scoping work with clients, or especially clients in like the retail space who absolutely have kiosks dotted all around the place, trying to get them in scope for anything is often the trouble that we find. And you have the conversations and they have a very fixed opinion of what their pen test should be in their environment, and you seem to have them to massage the conversation somewhere and just go, how about these little things over here? Where do they connect to? What do they do? And that sort of opens the conversation up, but it doesn't seem to be on sort of everyone's table. It doesn't seem to be something people are thinking about. It's like, oh, we've got this cool thing. We've installed it in all of our stores. The job done. Let's not care about security. From my side anyway, from my side of the pond, that's what it sort of seems like. We don't get a whole lot of people coming to us for testing. We get a lot of tests that then become encompassing of things like kiosks and other hardware over time. It's interesting.
I think that kind of issue is also a motivator for us, because the more we can show like how impactful any default device could be, just going straight from, it's somewhere on the street that anyone can access, to like a domain compromised scenario, which isn't incredibly atypical. Like that is possible in many environments. And I think the more we can just like publicly show that sort of thing, the easier it will be to get more people aware that that is something they should be testing.
It feels a little bit like it reminds me a little bit of the sort of a SCADA world and that type of era where you've got like a lot of incredibly poorly made stuff and a lot of really vulnerable things, like really vulnerable PLCs that have been thrown together on a shoestring with incredibly terrible firmware on top of them. And a lot of it comes down to things like questions about what the architecture looks like behind that, how well designed is the network behind that. It's like, yeah, okay, that device falls over when you sort of blow in its general direction, but as long as you've got good segmentation and you've got a good network behind it, you can sort of mitigate that. I mean, whether people do or not, and that's a completely other kettle of fish, isn't it? And I suppose things in like SCADA environments, people are installing them into very specialized environments, and that's where it very much differs from this, because kiosks go into, I would imagine, literally any environment, even where people are not 100% thinking about IT security all the time, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I think something that compounds that too is like a lot of the places where kiosks exist that you're not, like most people aren't thinking about them as kiosks here. It's something so common that like you don't associate it unless you're really getting into this sort of thing. It is a lot of the like service type businesses, for example, like car washes, their owners are not IT security oriented. I won't mention any like company names, but there's a lot of vendors that even their like manuals and their guides for deploying the kiosks that you would use at a car wash have really bad network architecture recommendations. So for example, like some of those devices can directly communicate to the entire network that runs the store, which includes like the financial database and other stuff like that. And that's just like publicly available. And that's what's recommended by some of those vendors. And that compounded with the fact that, you know, that owner, unless they happen to have been in IT before, they're just going to do what the manual says. You know, it just needs to work, which I feel like is the case for a lot of these scenarios.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it's like it has really almost got to the point where almost everyone probably interacts with at least one of these kiosks every day. I mean, I was just thinking, like, you know, self-checkout has been a thing at grocery stores for goodness knows how many years now. And those are kiosks, and they're definitely connected to some kind of network because they take your credit card information and everything. So, yeah, it's a weird like encroachment on our lives, like that I guess people barely notice, really. But if you think about it, yeah, everyone is using kiosks.
I live in the countryside. We don't have kiosks. We barely have the internet here.
It's funny you mention that because we actually have in our collection an NCR self-checkout terminal. It's an older one. We need a newer one to my right here. And granted, it was kind of a letdown because it's older. We sort of like escaped in 5 minutes, and I'm like, why did I ship this thing here? Granted, their newer ones are probably better, but if we look at it, most of these things are Windows devices, often legacy Windows devices. Occasionally there's Linux kernel, and our friend Christian has helped us with the testing of that. But these devices can be made secure if you think about them. Like, we take them for granted, as you mentioned. But if you think about them, you can make sure they're cloud managed, not joined to a legacy domain, not network adjacent. But it's only by thinking of them that these actions take place. And as an experiment, like with our buddy Jordan Mestel, we've been going back and forth for many months trying to hack a prototype kiosk. He'll refine policies. And the last version he hardened, we haven't been able to get yet. And we've been messing with it for days since he hardened it. So the delta between default out of the box, like a counterintuitive finding with this is, like, I've always thought, like, we did some Mac malware stuff, and Ezra wrote a really cool, one-liner ZSH Beaconator C2 script that we've used that will like pawn Mac. But in general, Mac OS seems a lot harder to attack to us than Windows. But if you see an Apple kiosk, Apple doesn't have a kiosk mode. And then you go into like Intune, like Apple says, see Intune or Jamp. You go to Intune or Jamp, we looked for the kiosk button with our buddy Jordan. There's no kiosk button. You manually implement each policy. So we worked with a hotel chain that let us test a very popular Apple kiosk. And it was as simple as escaping to host, going to Automator, and then you could just run code out of Automator to your heart's content. Python, Bash, ZSH, whatever you wanted to. Brilliant. So it's funny because as bad as Windows is at kiosks, Windows is actually better than Mac OS. So, I mean, just the more we test, the more we're going to find these things out. And even by putting in just 15 minutes worth of effort, a whole lot of progress can be made.
So where do you get all your kiosks from? Slightly non-technical question, but is it, do you just, it's not just eBay, right?
It really depends. Yeah, like it just depends. Cause like a lot of the ones that Mike has is like for Windows, you just need a Windows device that matches whatever like hardware you would be using, like if you're testing your own stuff. But for everything else, I've found that there's pretty much like a specialized website to sell every type of kiosk. So like if you want the like compute module for car wash kiosks, there's a website just for those components. And it's kind of the same for all of them. Like they have that for ATMs, they have that for any sort of one you can imagine. And then also eBay has everything else, like if you're willing to pay for it.
Yeah. And a lot you can do just even in a VM, like if you just want to tinker.
So speaking of tinkering, if you're in front of a kiosk in, let's say, a public space, how automatable of attacks you do? Or is it very much a case of manual input, as we said earlier? So if you're in, say, a public space, you've got a kiosk in front of you, is there a lot of time you need in front of a device to be able to cause a set of onward actions? Or is it something you can easily automate in some way, shape or form, adding devices in, anything like that? Or is it a case of you need the time in front of it to be able to execute?
I think mostly it'd be manual. I think there are cases where it would be something we could automate. It just depends on what it is. But if there's like an exposed like USB port or something like that, we could automate. But for the most part, I mean, it's just manual. What would you say, Mike?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that's where like we wanted to create the control escape host framework and do some of assemble knowledge. Because in our early days of this, we banged away at kiosks for days, right? Or revisited them or spent a lot of time around them. Of course, only with permission and properly scoped and the usual disclaimers. But like the idea of control escape host is to be able to walk up and quickly diagnose like what kind of kiosk am I looking at? Can I get to a port, or like what attack surface are we using? And there's a ton of attack surface that is on our roadmap that we haven't like developed out or refined yet. And then, often it's as simple as like, hey, you either get access to or plug in a keyboard, you figure out what OS you're on, you test the boundaries, the trust boundaries between the kiosk application and the OS, and you see what works, right? And we've had things like smuggling live off the land binaries off of a USB, and like Windows 11 attended access won't show the USB if it's properly configured. But if you type d://ftp.exe and ftp.exe is on that USB, it will prompt a terminal window, and then you have shell. And there's just a zillion scenarios like that. So you could get it pretty quick, and we probably could stage a lot of things to be pseudo automated. Not that you could get it without walking up to the kiosk so much. I mean, there'd be the normal network attack surface, but more a matter of, it's much more convenient when somebody gives you permission. Like a lot of times we've had permission to attack a kiosk. I've got two people standing over my shoulder glaring, and they're like, okay, 15 minutes go. And I'm like, so a little frazzled a couple of times. So, and that's where the methodology helps, is there's times where I'm testing and my mind's gone blank, and I literally pull up our repo. I'm like, what was that keyboard shortcut again? I look it up, and then I try it, and we're off to the races.
Do you think a lot of the problems come from the fact that I think a lot of people just assume, oh, the kiosks are physically secure, right? There's no exposed USB ports, and the interface is so limited that like they kind of just make the bad assumption that they must be secure then. There's no way for anyone just to come up and plug something in.
Yeah, I mean, I forget where the original quote is from, but I do agree with that. I feel like it falls under the like, it's in the state that they leave it in, it's secure enough to them that no one would ever spend the amount of time needed to find what's wrong with it. But they haven't met us, because we like, I think the amount of hours I've spent literally just looking at the settings window in Windows is probably like over 15 like hours total at this point. Just like looking at the different buttons and the UI and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think that is kind of, at least for some of them, I think that's what's happening.
And Ezra, maybe mention like the internet-facing kiosk problem you've identified.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the car wash stuff too, is that another issue is that a lot of the time, because of whatever recommended networking architecture, and this kind of like falls into or like a gray area with like the ICS, like SCADA stuff too, where some of the kiosks are just internet facing. So one of the things that we found like a few months ago was like a live kiosk to control a car wash just on the internet with no authentication. So this is like the control panel for like moving the blades and the water and stuff, and it's just on the internet. And that was just one thing. Like there's a ton of stuff like that. And again, like some of that kind of branches over into like the industrial control type of stuff. And I guess this technically is because it is an industrial control, but it's part of a kiosk system. So I count it.
Yeah. It's kind of got elements of both, really, hasn't it? I mean, you're causing a physical operational action at the other end via some software, but yeah, through a kiosk. So yeah, kind of 50-50. That's
And like a similar vein for that too is like parking garage kiosks, like the thing that you get your ticket from or pay with. Those are also just directly connected to whatever is controlling like the garage door or like if it's one of the bollard ones. And there's been a few cases where those are visible online too. The ones that I've seen did have like authentication for them, but I doubt there's any sort of like rate limiting or, anything like that implemented.
What's the strangest breakout you guys have ever done?
I feel like the strangest one we found that still works is if you can get to a file open menu and then you can expose the preview pane, which there's some ways to do that. Like if you're in a file, like a file save dialog, they usually have the new folder button. You create the new folder, right click in the dialog box to then open in a new folder. Once you're there, it's a more full, more unlocked Explorer. From there, once you get preview pane and test this out, even in attended access, you can just right click open in terminal. And in attended in a Win11 assigned access and a lot of kiosks, any Windows kiosk where terminal has not been either removed or explicitly blocked, that just works. One of the other super obscure ones is a lot of times when people write policies to block live off the land binaries, it goes off Windows Explorer and they haven't thought of the archive manager as a separate program. So a lot of times you can zip like PowerShell ISE or FTP, go into the archive, and depending on the individual settings of the kiosk, you can get shell by running your own copy of that. And you can even smuggle in files via an allowed website of the allow list if it's like an internet kiosk where they're like, hey, you can only go to this one domain, our domain, but their domain may have 1,000 subdomains that are valid, and one of those might be something you can gain access to and smuggle in a live off the land binary, and boom, you have shell.
One of the things too, and I might be misremembering the exact details, but for the Explorer details pane with terminal opening, wasn't it only on the second right click that worked?
Yeah, so thank you. It's the second right click, and then you right click again.
Like same position, same everything, but it would only show up the second time you do it, which is another, I mean, that goes back to what we were saying. It's like, automated testing would never find that. And when we found it, it was like, why is this even a thing?
Like, why Windows? Why?
Yeah, and that specifically for Windows, that's kind of one of the trends we've seen is like there seems to be a very big disconnect between what the UI says and what's actually happening like on the underlying system. Because one of the things Mike was mentioning is that for smuggling in files, one of the things we found you can do is that in Windows, setting a proxy for web traffic can be done with just user permissions. You don't need admin for it. So what we've set up for some of the tests for Win11 is we'll just, after we escape to the settings, we'll set a proxy for a server we control, and then just set whatever DNS record to the, like, if it's like you're saying a web-facing kiosk that's only allowed like example.com, and the proxy will just point example.com to another server we control. And it'll let us go straight to it, download the files. And because that specific domain name is allowed in like the policy for it, that gets past Mark of the Web. So there's no blocking of execution for the files when we do it that way.
That's great. It's like the trick with the old EDRs where they would just match on binary names. And then so you can just copy command.exe to the desktop and rename it anything, and then it'll run. It's like
not commands.exe.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what the heck? But that does remind me. I forget if they even patched it. But I remember I used to do a bunch of Citrix escapes, and there was a great one where you would use the file open menu, and you could just literally type like the C drive Windows System 32 dmd.exe and just hit enter, and it would spawn. Like even though you're in an open file open menu. But you could like run executables via the location bar, which always I just found so funny. Like it's really silly. But yeah,
it still works as of like a week ago,
awesome.
unless it's locked out via GPO in each implementation. And to your point, Ezra, like what we found is a lot of band-aiding. So like John Hammond did some amazing videos about 3 years ago on assigned access. And he pointed out the issue that you could rename, say, cmd.exe to msedge.exe and it would work. Well, they band-aided that. Like they blocked exactly what he demoed, but there were like a zillion ways you could still get it to work. Well, then we put out some videos and some releases and they band-aided that, but it still runs out of an archive, right? So it's like what we're seeing is we look at a lot of vendors is like a researcher, like the great work by Hammond back in the day, points something out. A vendor sticks a Band-Aid on it, but then doesn't deal with any of the real root causes. So anybody who takes that prior finding and just looks around can get new findings.
So it's exactly like in web app world where like you report script alert 1 like to the customer, and then they come back and say we fixed the XSS, and you test it. Oh yeah, that's blocked, and then you change the 1 to a 2, and then suddenly it pops up again. You're like, oh, I see what you did.
Yeah, because like one of the best examples of that for Windows is by default in assigned access, like Explorer is like a locked down version of Explorer where you can't make new files, you can't rename anything, you can't do any of that sort of stuff. It also still contains an escape to the full Explorer. And there's like 7 other places that you can get to the non-lockdown version. So like, sure, you help like a little bit, but it's not really addressing the issue at hand.
Yes.
Did you guys have like a specific story you wanted to go into?
Sure. One fun one is I was walking around an undisclosed place where I had permission to test. And I love to just walk, right? Get permission broadly and then just walk a space. And walked up to an HP point of sale kiosk. And it was obvious that they had locked down several things. But I think it was Win numlock or Control numlock. I'd have to look at the repo. Spawned a dialog box. And I think sticky keys worked too, like the old classic shift 5 times. You get a pop-up. From that, you get a little blue link to settings that actually goes to settings. And from there, you can branch many, many different directions. Sure enough, it was able to escape, was able to get to settings, was able to get Explorer dialogues, a shell, and just kind of completely escape. And this is pre-auth, right? The wild thing is it boots up in kiosk mode and it has a sign-in screen into the HP point of sale software where somebody enters their ID to sign into that point of sale kiosk to like process payments or do whatever they do. But Windows auth is basically bypassed and deferred to HP auth. And in this case, the device was on the wrong network, which allowed for lateral movement type scenarios. And, we were able to kind of put together a long report of all the things you could do from just this point of sale kiosk in a hallway that anybody could walk up to, right? And I think there's like 100 stories at that point maybe not quite that many, but close, that are just that type of thing.
Is that quite common in Kiosk world, where you have it booting into an OS and then you have like a vendor software on top of that handles all the, I guess, kiosk authentication up front? So I guess in the background, the operating system's already loaded, is already authenticated, and then you've literally got an application in the front of it, and that becomes your main kind of authentication into the system, I suppose. And then your security zone is going to be as good as whatever that main entry point is, right? I suppose that's ludicrous.
Yeah, that hits the nail on the head, right? Like if you use assigned access, a good indicator of attack to write is just if you see kiosk user 0 doing anything but what kiosk user 0 is supposed to do, somebody is hacking your kiosk and moving laterally. Yeah, like that's a really solid indicator. And I think testing methodology wise, what I'd like everybody to be doing, and I'd like it to be like, to your point, Tib3rius, I'd like this to be a pen testing line card item, is, hey, like, try to escape to host, try to map out adjacent resources, do recon, do ingress tool transfer if you choose, see what gets detected, and then attack the domain. Use the type of tricks that Spencer Alessi and Debug Theory are always sharing with attacking the domain. Like, I think a line card item should be, like, if you have an airport and there's things that, millions of people interact with of low trust that, again, already off to Windows, it's this proprietary third-party app. There should be a line card of, can you escape to host? Can you move laterally? Can you pawn the domain? Is that domain trusted or adjacent to the important domains? And I feel like if we tested that playbook the world over, I think we'd find and fix a lot of things.
I think you'd find some horrific things, or it'd make a lot of us want to reconsider some things very carefully, I imagine. Do you find a lot of these kiosks have any kind of protections on them other than like what the operating system comes with? So does anyone think of installing anything beyond default?
I'm sure they do, but in the testing we've done, we have not had any issue getting around any sort of like security agent that would be on the device. And I think most of that too is that, it's the same issue of the kiosks themselves, that most of the vendors making those sort of tools, like, they're not kiosk centric. So again, like Mike mentioned, one of the easiest things you can do, like if on Windows, if kiosk user 0 is using literally any other process besides like what you have set up, so either if it's Edge or if you have like whatever custom app, that should just be locked down immediately. Like, there are no ifs, ands, or buts. If they're doing anything else, it should just be a non-starter. And in most of the testing we've done, there's not really been much friction for the agents we've tested for the most part.
I imagine no one's really monitoring them either, because from a SOC point of view, there's a cost to every host you monitor, right? In SOC land, and like deploying whatever EDR tool you're using or whatever agent-based system you're using is expensive. If you start rolling it out to start thinking about like large global corporations and who have maybe like lots of retail stores kicking about the place, the last thing they're going to be thinking of doing is installing something that gathers some kind of telemetry on all of their kiosk devices in all their stores, right? It's just, it's crazy. It seems like such an oversight to some things that might potentially have access to like quite a high level of network access in some cases to just not be thinking about or monitoring. It just feels like a right backwards story where when you speak to people, they always put all of the heavy monitoring tools on the most sort of what they see as their most critical assets, which are often the big sort of servers that are under lock and key and no one can really get access to and are all heavily sort of architected. And then you got these things sat on the edge of the network, just running riot that no one's thinking of at all. It's such a weird backward story when you sort of think about it. Yeah, very eye-opening.
It's kind of like how we used to get access into the internal environments via the printers, because nobody ever secures the printers and they're all domain connected.
There's been a few things like that over time, isn't it? Like IP phones were a fun target for pen testers for a long time. I remember going after those for ages because you'd walk into a network and they'd have like all the sort of NAC controls all over the place, stopping you plugging your laptop in forever. And then you sit down and go, oh, there's an IP phone here or a printer here, but can't handle NAC. So they've left all those ports completely open. It's just all those little oversights, isn't it, about these little additional what tools and devices we plug into networks. Yeah, most often aren't managed by the central IT teams either. But is that do you find that as well? Is it very sort of vendor specific? I mean, they have to do the updates, they have to maintain, etc. And I guess that leads to a situation where you perhaps have really ancient kiosks kicking about the place.
I think there's both forks, right? Like the HP point of sale example, HP was providing what it called its own antivirus, if you call it that. And thus the EDR of that entity was not running. On the flip side, I could name drop right now 2 major fast food chains that you can just swipe away their kiosk app and look, and they are running their enterprise EDR on it. And again, if they wrote custom IOAs that were kiosk centric, which obviously before they do that, they should just put it in a kiosk mode. That would be a good start. Like anytime you can just swipe away by accident the interface, that's the lowest bar. And I'd say Ezra, what do you think? Like 20, 30 examples of that in the wild, and at least 5 of them at major like Fortune 500 type entities?
So, somewhere around in that range, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a wild journey of both what's been surprisingly good and what's been surprisingly bad. But I'd say it's like maybe a 50-50 split, not between good and between which ones are running EDR and which ones are proprietary third party.
Talking about your swipe everything away thing, is it sometimes a case of the IT teams that are installing these at the company like don't really have control over those devices, and the management of those devices is outsourced? So they sometimes come with a criteria of, oh, you must install our EDR tooling here, here's a script to do this, and then everything lives happily there. It just seems like such an oversight not to put something into kiosk mode or to have no control over the device. It seems like there's a set of controls somewhere where someone is going, the policy says you need to install our tool here, you must do that. And they go, yeah, okay, fine. But then they don't have control over hardening the rest of the device at all. And that's just left to the vendors, I suppose. And then I guess you're kind of at the mercy of however good the vendor is at securing their own devices, I suppose.
I think that's definitely the case. And I also think the proliferation has been an issue. Really, there's a pressure to quickly roll out self-ordering at fast food. And some exec somewhere told some IT admin who, with the best of intentions, just rolled it out and they just didn't know any better. And like I said, there's a big fast food chain that we've tagged on Twitter twice, we've emailed twice, we've been trying to reach for 4 months. And this fast food chain, you can just swipe away their stuff and you have a Windows device that, without exploring further, which we won't do, it looks like it probably could be not so great, right? So I think some of it's just, this stuff's moving fast. Like there's Coca-Cola kiosks were trending on X last week. Like they're everywhere, and they're adding more so quickly that people who are responsible just don't always know what they're supposed to be doing.
Do you ever find yourself just in front of a kiosk when you're like just going about your everyday life, just swiping away at stuff and just seeing what happens whenever you encounter one?
I follow the normal use rule. If we have permission, we'll test up to the scope of that permission. If we don't, in my view, if you're interacting with the application presented to you the way it's been designed, like a food ordering menu, you're supposed to swipe and touch things. So if swiping and touching things escapes, we take a picture of it and we email the vendor and let them know. The flip side is often that leaves mysteries like, what network is on this on? What domains it joined to? Those are questions that we would never seek without permission, right? Those are things that now what often happens is we notify somebody, they're like, show us, and then we have permission, with them often standing over our shoulder, kind of like, all right, hurry this along now, which is why the methodology.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think I follow pretty much in the same boat for that for most cases.
Yeah, I think there's that normal. If you happen to just stumble onto a little shortcut on a keyboard by accident, not such a problem. If you start digging around their network and disabling their EDR tooling, that's probably a bit more of an issue. Yeah, I asked this because I was at a bowling alley the other day, and they have kiosks at the bowling alley down there. And I was assigned a task of putting everyone's names in. And you can imagine how that ended up. It's like, why is this guy's name like script? Like, just trying various keyboard combinations, like, just seeing what happens. Like, you're really bad at entering names. It's like, No, I'm trying to find stuff. But yeah, no, it's good. Surprisingly okay.
It's like Bobby drop tables. One of us needs to name a kid
Yeah.
WinR FTP.exe.
Yeah. Next up at bowling is FTP.exe. Oh, oh, good little FTP.
My formal message is that A, views do not represent our employer or any of our volunteer organizations, and B, don't hack any kiosks you don't have permission to. That's our official stance. But if you're given a keyboard and you're given swipes and all you do is types and swipes, like it gets gray.
It does.
I once went go-karting with a company, my company, and not my current company, but the sign up that you went to like a web app, like a website, and you had to like enter it was like probably like a indemnification form, basically, if you crash and burn, you're not going to sue us. But they asked for your name, and I put my name in, and then I was like, actually, I'm going to change my first name to just the emoji of a race car. And I tried that and submitted it, and it worked. It submitted it, and then you get to the actual racing, and all the names are up on the scoreboard, and mine is just a square because the scoreboard doesn't support that Unicode yet, I guess. But yeah, that's as close as I came to doing anything weird with a kiosk, I guess.
I will say too, even though I don't try to mess with anything that isn't normal, I have noticed I can't not think about it now. Like when I see one, is that Windows or is it Linux? Is it Windows 7, Windows 10? I can tell it's just becoming second nature of if I see one just to be wonder what's going on over there.
I think that's everyone in this industry though, right? That's all pen testers. I look at web apps now, browsing the internet, I'll just see a parameter fly by in the URL. I'm like, oh, that looks vulnerable. Oh, quick, do they have a bug bounty program? Yeah.
You have to dial it back sometimes. If I'm going somewhere with my wife and I see something on holiday or something, it just I don't know, it'd be something pops up at the hotel room or the hotel's website or something. He's like, He's like, what? What have you seen? Nothing. You just let's not get down into that conversation. We'll just ignore it. Crack on with the holiday. Pretend it didn't happen.
Let's just say in some public environments, we're a little bit like Jack Skellington going around singing, "What's this?" As we look at all the kiosks.
Yes.
So,
all right, that's a new idea for a song that I need to create with AI now. All right.
That one added to the list.
So my main question now is, okay, so if you have people who are listening to the podcast now really interested in trying to hack kiosks or get into kiosk hacking, this isn't a thing where you can just, spin up a hack the box machine, right? Or, have vulnerable web apps out there. What are your recommendations on how people can just approach this if they want to learn stuff?
Okay. So, a great place to start is Win11 assigned access, because it's basically free if you've got an enterprise licensed copy of Windows. You can spin it in a VM and tinker with it. You can throw it on some old hardware and tinker with it. The other is look for free trials, right? Because it's much safer as you get started with this. Maybe if you don't have permission or any pen testing engagements, to just take an Intel NUC type device or whatever you can get an OS running on, download a free trial of a product, spin it up, and just start playing with it and test notes. And you can even do pull requests and add it to the control escape host repo and become one of our contributors for the project. But the other piece of advice I'd give to pen testers is you've already got permission. So be curious, right? If you're walking around, if you're like, hey, I don't usually do physical pen testing, but I live in Kansas City and I noticed this customer is in Kansas City, just ask the question hey, can I drive out and include a physical element? And just see what you see, and you might be surprised.
And the only thing I'd add on to that too is that I think we do a lot of stuff on the OSINT side of things too. And, even with just a simple Shodan subscription, there's a ton of stuff you can find kiosk related if you just start Googling what models there are, what's out there, and searching for that type of stuff. That can kind of get you started with, it's still passive. Like, you're not going to be impacting anything, just looking to see what's on the internet.
Awesome. Yeah, no, good advice.
I love that approach of just driving out to them as well. That's quite nice in a way. Because I think the temptation for a lot of pen testing companies is every pen test engagement is a very sort of sandbox. This is the billable time that we've got to spend on this particular one application. And I don't think it's particularly common anymore that a lot of pen testers go out to site, spend time with clients outside of billable time and just asking those questions. Like I remember when back in the days when Tib3rius and I used to work together, there's a particular bank that we came to know and love. we shall not. We shall not name. But they some of the nice meetings we had with them, certainly in the later years of that relationship, was one where we would just go to their offices and just walk around with the IT manager and just point at stuff and just go, "What's that? Why does that do that? Why is that coffee machine connected to the network? What possible use case can that have?" And then that would open up like a whole range of testing to us. Like, yeah, maybe we should include the coffee machine inside the scope for the next internal test. Like, good. Now we've got some hardware to test specifically as well. We've got some other targets. We've expanded our range from just testing a web app through to actually testing some interesting stuff on their internal network, which is great. Great client, though. They had some weird policies for pen testing. I remember once, like, I can't remember if it was you or me, one of us was called up to go and test because they had made a CSS change on their website. They changed the font to bold.
Yeah.
And that apparently was a trigger for getting a pen test done.
Yep. I remember that one.
Bizarre, but a great client to have around. Especially
Free
when,
money.
yeah, oh, God forbid I should make a font larger. Whoa. Yeah.
Well, the font was bold, so you had to make the pen test bold too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Precisely.
Good clients, fun times. But yeah, asking those questions, I think that's super important, and just building that relationship. It's such an underrated thing, especially if you like something I hear a lot from like mid-level pen testers who have been doing it a while, or even senior pen testers doing it for a while. Is like they start to get a bit into that. Oh, it's all the same. It's blah, 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 standard pen test. Well, and you sort of sometimes I sit back and go, have you asked them? Have you spoken to them and started going up beyond that boundary of what is your scope and just asking questions? Because sometimes that gets you so far, gets you really into the interesting areas of testing. Like, yeah, I think we're all a bit bored of doing the standard pen test here and there, but there are so many ways to like break out of that scope and take it into other directions just by having conversations. Nice crossover with the word breakout there.
And I believe you guys have your own C2 as well that you're developing?
Yeah, so we do. And it's kind of been something we've co-developed along the past few years with everything else too, that started out from like reverse engineering a few different things. And it kind of integrates into our whole flow for testing. Because like I mentioned earlier with security agents on kiosks, like there's a lot that a lot of AV and EDR just do not catch. And essentially it's called Beaconator C2. The reason why we made it is like we noticed a few patterns of things getting past our tools. Like, okay, well, if they're going to keep doing this, we should just build out something to continually test this in our environment. So it's essentially just, it's very modular and in a bunch of different languages, just kind of doing the same thing in all of them, and to kind of provide a baseline for testing against different tactics that are used in different languages. And where this originally came from was, have you guys ever heard of AutoIt or AutoHotkey?
No, I can't say I have.
I think so, no.
Yes, they're both like scripting languages. AutoHotkey specifically is like a productivity type thing where, if you need like macros for Excel sheets or similar type Office stuff, you can write scripts for that sort of thing in AutoHotkey. The primary issue with it is that it has like a bundled runtime. So when you compile the scripts for it, you get a huge binary, well, huge in this context, like 10 megabyte binary that has the runtime included with it and like a valid certificate. So a few years ago, when this first started getting used by threat actors, it was not really detected by any AV or EDR for the most part. And as that activity started ramping up, like it's gotten a little bit better, but there's still tools that do not catch it. So essentially what our C2 framework is it started out as just being based in AutoHotkey, but now we have the same capabilities using AutoHotkey, Lua, Python, Rust. Like it's just essentially the same tactic, but in all those different languages for testing.
Nice. Oh, as well. Is that publicly available, or is that just something you've yourself?
Yeah, that's on GitHub. So it's Beaconator C2 on GitHub. Yeah, so like we have like a full management framework for it to make it pretty easy. Like it has a UI where you can deploy everything, build different beacons with different modules, that sort of stuff.
Nice.
Does it have a kiosk?
It does not, but that would be kind of funny actually if we made a kiosk just with the manager on it.
There you go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Do you think there's anything I missed there, Mike, for that overview?
No, I mean, I think the idea was we don't always control, if we find a code execution flaw for something, we don't always control what language it's in. So like, as we went through generations from bypass it to auto pawn key, working toward Beaconator C2, which is kind of the third iteration of this work. And Ezra put a lot of amazing work into giving us a great UI and modular design with maybe like a dozen of us working on components of functionality. Like I was doing some testing, and have you ever run into wwb-com basic? It's super obscure, and I was trying to write a beacon payload for a TCP shell with the flaw I found, and it didn't work. Well, I learned that with wwb-com basic, I believe TCP depends on an ActiveX module that was deprecated from Windows like a decade ago. So I actually, or maybe 2 decades ago, so it would only do HTTP. So where we evolved to is like, hey, every time somebody needs a code, like a beacon payload and develops it in a language, it only needs to be developed once. Some of them are very full featured and have like the full functionality. Some are just enough to prove code and command execution and get like basically a foothold to maybe drop other things. So that's kind of the evolution and backstory. But yeah, I love to give Ezra a shout out for the awesome UI he's developed for it, and to all of our contributors.
Yeah, I've literally got the page open next to me now. And the UI is, I've seen a lot of C2s in my time. It's quite a nice one compared to some of the others.
Yeah,
Obviously,
that's something we learned early on, because like the first iteration of this was a really, really terrible like HTML page with poorly updating stuff. Like, because it was just the very first version, and the idea is that I feel like more people will, try it out and use it if it's just super simple UI wise.
it is. It looks simple and clean. So that's kind of what you want from a C2, really, isn't it? Not to be bogged down and confused about what you're looking at. But yeah, that's awesome. Like, I'm definitely going to go and try that now. Not now. I need to go to bed soon. But when I wake up,
Awesome.
unless I get my hands on a cup your size, Mike, then I'll be up all week.
Well, Mike, Ezra, thank you so much for joining us and sharing kiosk hacking with us and our listeners. Where can our followers find and follow you online, I guess?
So I'm on X as Crude Solutions, and then we have a shared GitHub repo with a bunch of stuff out there under Crude Solutions as well. And go ahead, Ezra.
Yeah, so like all the projects will be under that Crude Solutions GitHub. So that includes all the kiosk resources, and then also the C2. Then I'm also on X under Shema Woods, but you can just search Ezra Woods and it'll pop up.
Awesome. Well, thank you for listening. I've been Tib3rius. He's been Andy Swift. We've been joined by Mike and Ezra, and this has been Across the Pondcast. You can find all of our social media links in the episode description or on acrossthepondcast.net, and we will see you next time.
See you later. I'm going to find me some kiosks.